In the news recently, Ash Ketchum finally won his very first Pokemon League championship. It took him so many tries, but he finally did it, and to think he accomplished all that before his 11th birthday. To celebrate, I thought we'd create a little Pokemon League of our own, as in taking all of the original 151 Pokemon and seeing which character from League of Legends they match best with. There's almost the exact same number of each, and so many of the matches work so well, I'm now half convinced Lee gets his character ideas from the Pokedex. Okay, and here we are at our wonderful Gen 1 Pokedex. Look how beautiful it is, how watercolory it is, except for the pink Pokemon there. Just blank. Look at Ditto. It's just a couple of lines. Now, I figure we at first should start with the easiest, most obvious combinations, and then progress into the more controversials or challenging ones as we go on. Very first up are the big boys of League, Gragas and Tahm Kench. I don't think anyone could disagree when I put them under Snorlax and Lickitung. Even easier is the champion and Pokemon who are based off of the exact same story, the Ninetale Fox Ari and Ninetales the Pokemon. For their small fiery pre-evolution, Annie, the small fiery Noxian, will be our Vulpix. Now, following up with the felines, we're going to have Yumi under Meowth. And who could Yumi possibly evolve into but the even bigger cat, Rengar? And now for Mr. Mime. I really want to place a collie here because everybody who plays her is a clown. However, there's somebody a lot more clown-like, so unfortunately, I'm gonna have to use Shaco here. Singed is a very easy to place champion because he can't go anywhere else but Weezing. For somebody who evolves into Singed, we're gonna need someone who has definitely committed war crimes but is much more secretive about it. Teemo is smaller but no less psychotic, plus his main thing is poison as well, so he's a very fitting coughing. Next, we're going to take Alistar and we're going to put him over Taratos. There he is. Now, Anivia is actually probably a lot more obvious than a bunch of these other ones we've already placed because Anivia can't be anything other than Articuno. Not quite as obvious, but we're going to bring in the other fellow Freljord gods and put them as our other legendary birds because Volibear has electricity, and this guy whose name I forgot uses fire. Now, there are a lot of grass-type Pokemon in Gen 1, or at least there are if you count bug and poison Pokemon to be among them, but there's only straight up 3 genuine true plant Pokemon, not counting Executor. And luckily, we have 3 plant champions. We're gonna go in order of planting this from the person who uses trees, the person who speaks for the trees, and the person who is the tree. Another incredibly easy trio. We're gonna go from someone who is a rock to someone who is a very big rock, down to somebody who throws rocks. Now, this champion might not have the look of Mew, but I think everybody will agree this person has the spirit of Mew. When I say Bard is our 151st Pokemon. But then, if Bard is Mew, who could possibly be Mewtwo? Now, I don't believe this person exactly has the look of Mewtwo, but I feel for the best combination, it has to be Aurelion Sol. He's like Bard, as he's from space. And even more importantly, he's like Mewtwo in the way that he's completely full of himself. Now, one very obvious combination that you might kick yourself for not seeing is Lee Sin as Hitmonlee. I didn't even know just how well it fit until I said it out loud. Now, when it comes to Hitmonchan, there's a lot more competition as there's a lot more people who punch. But when it comes to the absolute most punchy person, Vi is the champion. Now, looking up slightly, you might look up and go, who is a metallic, electronic champion? And you would definitely come to the conclusion of these two. But you might be wondering, why does Orianna evolve into Blitzcrank? After all, she is the more advanced looking robot. The answer is 1, Blitzcrank is bigger. That counts for something. But much more importantly, Orianna is a very advanced robot made to look like a human. Blitzcrank is a far more simpler robot who's somehow far more human than Orianna will ever be. Look it up, there's a story of these two together, and those are her words, not mine. Now, for a slightly more difficult one, we're going to put Urgot, the enemy crab champion, under Kingler, the enemy crab Pokemon. That one's actually very easy, but who evolves into Urgot is a little bit difficult, but I believe Renata has the exact same energy, only with less legs. Chansey is the interesting Pokemon because it's not really like any other Pokemon. It's a very simple normal type. It's just kind of there, but it's known for being very caring and being that nursing, loving Pokemon. And when it comes to that, I think there's only one champion that really holds those qualities. And while he might not be pink, I believe Braum is by far the best pick. And right next to him, possibly one of the easier picks, we're going to have to put Amumu as our Tangela. Knocking out more of these incredibly blank pink Pokemon, let's try to decide Jigglypuff, the singing Pokemon. Only one champion is known for singing, so this one is easy. Her evolution is interesting as it has to be the other musical person who's not actually a singer, but definitely has the same energy, and is a lot less famous for being annoying. Next up on our pink Pokemon is Clefairy and Clefable. Not actually fairy Pokemon in this generation, but very much from space. You know who else is from space? Soraka. She is from space, so she shall be Clefable, who evolves into her. The other girl from space, but small, Zoe. Put your hands together for Zoe, ladies and gentlemen. For our biggest pink Pokemon, Nidoking. The Ruin King is the only possible answer as they both have royalty in common. Now, who evolves into them? Good question. I'll answer that later because right now I have to put at least the Spider Queen under Nidoqueen. Haha, see what I did there? Very funny. Rounding out our pink practically blank Pokemon is Ditto, who could transform into any other Pokemon. Who else could transform into anything? It's Nico from the hit game League of Legends. Wow, incredible. She's gonna be Ditto. Why isn't it the other guy who could transform into anything else? It's because I already put him under Nidoking, and I'm sticking to that answer. Now, I can't believe I forgot. We did the cat Pokemon, but what about the dog Pokemon? Obviously, the dog champion is going to go under the big dog, and the wolf champion is going to go over the little dog. Normally, you'd think a wolf would get the big dog status, but Nasus is a very big dog. In other well-fitting combos, we got Genghis Khan, who is a big guy who carries around a little guy. On a similar topic, Nunu is a little guy who is carried around by a big guy. I think this combo speaks for itself. And then there's the whole question of Pikachu. I feel like this is a very important one as Pikachu is pretty much the face of Pokemon, but the question is, who is the face of League of Legends? At first I was thinking maybe Ash, she's the first champion that anybody plays, or maybe Teemo, he's small and furry and absolutely used to be the face of League of Legends, or maybe Jinx with all the current media definitely is the face of the game now. However, I'm not going to pick any of those because I'm going to choose Kennen, who is a small furry electric rat. Is he a mascot of the series? Absolutely not. I forgot he existed until moments ago, but he really fits the small electric rat archetype. Much less importantly is Raichu, who I believe Zeri fits very well as she is a significantly larger electric person. And if you use her abilities to kill me through a wall, you too are a rat. Next is Ekans and Arbok. We have exactly one snake champ, so we're going to put her on Arbok. But who could evolve into her? We don't have anybody snake-like, but we do have her sister, and I'm going to call that good enough. Also, insert a very funny joke about anybody who plays Katarina being a snake. And just before that, we got our duo of birds, Spearow and Fearow. Luckily in League, we have a duo of birds. They do not inspire fear, and they do not have a spear, but Rickon and Zaya, Zilla, Zuka absolutely fit. This next one is pretty obvious, but it's a little difficult. Here is Wukong. If you closely observe, you will find that he is a monkey. So I'm gonna put him under the monkey Pokemon, Mankey. But who does he evolve into? There is no other real monkey-like character, but I'm gonna put his master. Who is his master? Who else but Master Yi? Is he monkey-like? No, he's not. But I think it fits. And then we have the horse Pokemon. At first I was struggling with this as I thought we only had one genuine horse, but we also have the Deer League of Champion, who I think is the perfect as Ponyta, leaving Rapidash open for Hecarim. Now let's go back to Nidoqueen and Nidoking. Here we have a spooky king and a spooky queen, but who evolves into this scary evolution? For Nidorino, I feel Thresh is a very suitable match. And who else but Vigar for our smallest, spookiest person, Nidoran. On the spooky female side, Vex is definitely our smallest, spookiest girl, so she's gonna go as Nidoran, and nobody other than Gwen can go in the middle as Nidorina. And then we have our duo that fights the spooks, Lucian and Senna. I want to do a Pokemon that's moderately spooky themselves. You know what's pretty spooky? Bats! Even Batman's afraid of them, so I'm gonna drop these two over Zubat and Golbat. Bada bing, bada boom. But what about Morgana and Kale? Where do they go? They're a duo, so I'm looking at a 2 evolution, and when I look at these two, what is the biggest difference that I see? Obviously, one has wings, and the other does not. It's for that very reason I'm gonna put them under Venonat and Venomoth. Did you know that Paris and Parasect are not actually the crabs that you see in the picture? It's actually the mushrooms growing on their back that are controlling them. That's why Parasect no longer has any pupils. So for these two, I'm thinking some champions that are actually pretty powerless, but are in control of something much stronger. So I'm gonna put Corki under Paris, and for his actually very fitting evolution, Rumble. I've been kinda shying away from them, but let's actually do some of the 3-stage evolutions. And when I think trios in League of Legends, I think That's right. Serial killers. They don't kill because they have to, they kill because they want to. And when I think of Pokemon that actively try to make the world worse, I think Vileplume. I mean, it's in the name. I also just don't like Vileplume. So, how do these three go? I'm gonna order them as Jinx, Jin, and Dr. Mundo. Because from my understanding, that's roughly the order of their kill count. Jinx might have the smallest kill count as she's more about general destruction. Jin is definitely about killing people, but usually each kill is very slow and personal. And Mundo either has the greatest or the least kill count. I'm not exactly sure, but he is the biggest, and remember, that counts for something. Now, let's talk about ground types. Shurima is very much in the ground. Quite literally, actually. So let's grab the few mortal Shurimans, Sivir and Arkshan. Let's put them under Diglett and Dugtrio. Speaking of Shurima, in the most iconic Shuriman, Azir would fit very easily if there was a single flying / ground or rock type, and then I realized there absolutely is under Aerodactyl, which is where he's gonna go. For Sandshrew and Sandslash, I'm thinking those who like to bury under the ground or maybe roll up into a ball. Luckily, we have the roll up into a ball champion and the burrow under the ground champion. Now, let's talk about the Void. I feel like the Void champions definitely fall under bug types as they look like bugs. But what about the human Void champs? Malzahar, Kaisa, and Kassadin, all at some point in their lives used to be normal people, but were gifted or cursed with weird unnatural powers. Almost like a psychic. So I'm gonna drop them under Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam. Malzahar might be the strongest among them, but he's pretty human passing, so I'm gonna put him under Abra. He could actually make it around a normal town if he wasn't destroying it. Kaisa's passing, but only from the neck up, and Kassadin looks more like a bug person than the actual bug monsters. Now I feel this next one is going to be very divisive. There are slightly more champions in League of Legends than there are the 151 original Pokemon, but I feel this absolutely needs to be done because Magikarp is 100% Gnar, and Gyarados is just Gnar again, but big. Does this mean one less person is going to make it onto the board? Sure. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of ice champions all coming from Freljord, but there's not a lot of ice Pokemon, so who deserves to be Lapras? I'm gonna say Trundle, who has the shard of true ice. You have to respect that. Now, because I can't stay on a single theme, let's talk about Eevee, who's very arguably the second most iconic Pokemon from this generation. It's a little bit difficult as the most noteworthy thing about Eevee is what it evolves into, as it's pretty plain itself. So, which champion has a very vanilla vibe to it that feels like it could go in any direction? Personally, I'm gonna say Garen from Demacia, as he is very vanilla, but who evolves from him in interesting different ways? I'm gonna choose the three other champions who constantly scream Demacia. Jarvan's gonna go under Flareon because he has fire themes. Jinxiao is definitely gonna be our Jolteon because he's all about speed. And Lux obviously fits under Vaporeon, as did you know, Lux is the most breedable. There are now only 4 fire Pokemon left on our board, and Brand is definitely going on as one of them, as he is a man made of fire. But I don't think anybody is worthy of evolving into Brand, so he's gonna go over Magmar. Now, with only 3 fire Pokemon left, the question is, who's going under Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard? They have to be pretty iconic champions that most everybody is familiar with, but definitely needs to be at least some kind of red theme. And when I think people with a red theme, I'm thinking Noxians. And when I'm thinking Noxians, I'm thinking Darius, the quintessential standard. He's red, he's iconic, he's angry, he's going under Charmander. It's a little tough then to decide though. Who does he evolve into? He's already a very big guy. I'm gonna go with his more famous brother, Draven. Remember, where Darius has 1 axe, Draven has 2. And then to round out our fire trilogy, we're gonna go with Swain, the true commander of the Noxian army. Maybe not very dragon themed, but neither is Charizard. So let's talk about dragons. Shyvana is our one remaining, obviously dragon champion, so she's gonna go over this one. But what about Dragonite's earlier stages? They are still dragons, but they don't really look like traditional dragons. I mean, Dragonair looks more like a water noodle than a dragon, and luckily, we have a champion that fights exclusively with water noodles. We're gonna put Nyla, we're gonna put this champion over there. And for our smallest, bittiest dragon, we're gonna put Lulu, as she is small and itty bitty and has a dragon trainer skin, and I think that counts. It's a stretch, but I think it counts. Now, how about Talon? Look at this guy, just hopping, jumping around Summoner Rift doing his parkour. I gotta tell you, I think he's actually pretty cool. So I'm gonna put him under Tentacool. For his evolution, I'm gonna put the guy with actual tentacles. I think that fits a little bit better. Psyduck is a pretty goofy little water dude with a little bit of magical powers. Twisted Fate is a dude from a very watery area who's pretty goofy and has a little bit of magical powers. His evolution is going to be his best buddy, Graves, who's just as goofy, but he has a gun, making him the evolution. I actually spent a lot of time thinking Jinx was a fire Pokemon, but she's actually an Ice Witch, which is very convenient as I have an Ice Witch champion, Lysandra, who's going to be placed right here. Electabuzz is electric, and so is this person, and that's all the reasoning I need. Now you might be thinking, who is going to be Magnetite and Magnetron? They're also electric, but in later generations, they're also steel. So I'm going to go with something slightly different and ask, who's the most steel-like? And that's going to be our knockoff Metal Bender, Camille, for Magnemite, and our knockoff Metal Bender, Rel, who's just absolutely covered in steel, and is going to be our Magnemite. We still got 2 more straight-up fish Pokemon, and luckily, we have 2 more straight-up fish champions. Fizz is smaller, making him Goldeen, while Nami is much bigger and fishier, so she gets to be Seeking. So there's the one question of who gets to be Scyther? It's kinda tough, as there are quite a few Sword and Blade champions, which I'll, reasonably fits under, but one person who does not wield a weapon at all is Kha'Zix, who I think fits best just because he looks a lot like Scyther. I'm gonna put him right there. Attaboy. Now, I was thinking, Ionia is filled with grass. It's a very grassy place, so I feel a lot of their champions should be grass type. And you know what? Ionia is also filled with ninjas. Just ninjas all over the place. Here's 3 ninjas now. There they are. I hate to put any amount of respect on Akali, but she absolutely fits as Shen's student and is going to be our Bulbasaur. Shen, her master, is going to be Ivysaur, and Zed, the most dangerous of the 3, gets to be Venusaur. Now let's get some more Void champions onto the board. We still have a bunch of bug Pokemon, and Kog'Maw straight up looks like Weedle, so that's where he's going to go. Belvet fits as Kakuna, and Giant Cho'Gath gets to be our evolution and be Beedrill. So let's go with some more Ionians. Aurelia is going to be Caterpie, Karma is going to be Metapod, and Symmetra, with her unlimited potential, gets to be Butterfree. Remember, the more evil you are, the better chance you have of being an evolution. And how about the Poliwag line? The Poliwag line is another group of wet dudes, but these guys like to fight, which is why we're going to take the 3 fightiest people of Bilgewater and drop them over here in the exact order of people I would not want to meet in a dark alleyway. Machop is kind of similar as it's a bunch of fighty dudes, but without the watery theme. So for our first smallest bittiest fighter, we can't have anybody else but Poppy. For our next fighter, it has to be Jax, who in his old lore used to be straight up the toughest guy in League of Legends, but for the final slot, we have to give it to Seth, who's the owner of his own fighting ring, so he gets to make himself champion. Now let's go back and actually finish our starters. For Squirtle, I'm actually thinking Ash. Again, she's one of the very first people you play, so it makes sense to put her there. Staying with the Freljord theme, we're going to have her spiritual sister as Wartortle and her political husband as Blastoise. Now, we still have quite a few bird Pokemon left, and we only really have 1 true bird champion remaining, right? That's right. So let's bring in the other 2 women of Demacia to bring her company. Vayne the Vigilante is going to go over Pidgey. Quinn the Scout is going to be Pidgeotto. And Fiora the Duelist gets to be Pidgeot. Now, it's kind of sad that Quinn the actual bird champion doesn't get to be Pidgeot, but in order of prestige, I think it's pretty fair. Now, there are a couple of obvious ones I have been holding off for a while. We're going to put Twitch, the rat champion, under Eradicate, the rat Pokemon. The tough part is, he already feels like it's the lowest you could go. And I really don't want to disrespect this champion, but Tristana is one of the few people even smaller than him and has manic mouse-like energy. Now we have Slowpoke. Slowpoke and Slowbro are known for being slow. You know who else is known for being slow? Dead people. Karthus is dead. He gets to be Slowbro. Evolving into him is Yorick, the guy who's in charge of putting dead people into the ground. For Farfetch'd, I'm putting Yasuo as he does have a slight bit of a wind theme, and I just think they have very similar vibes. For Doduo and Dotrio, I'm thinking archers, specifically Kindred, who is actually 2 people, and Varus, who I've been explained, is technically 3 people. Skipping ahead in Muck is definitely Zac. It definitely fits way too perfectly not to make it happen. Now, there's nobody exactly as slimy like Zac is, but there is one dude who turns into a puddle on the ground, and his name is Vladimir, who I think fits pretty well as our Grimer. Cloyster and Shellder are 2 Pokemon known for being very defensive, hard, and shelled off. So for those 2, I'm thinking the guy who turns into diamonds, and the guy who just straight up is a suit of armor. Now, the ghost Pokemon are interesting. I've been holding off for a long time because there's a lot of people who qualify being spooky ghosts themselves. Luckily, I've placed most of them now, so this gets a lot easier. First, I'm gonna put Callista, the vengeful ghost, as Ghastly. Then Nocturne, who just really looks like Haunter, as Haunter. And finally is Fiddlesticks, who I don't believe is actually a ghost, but he's definitely the most scary and demonic thing on this list, so he fits well enough. Onyx has one thing and one thing only going for him, and that's being a really big, hard dude.
He is a very big man.
Tarek is a really big, hard dude because of gems, so I'm gonna put Tarek here with no additional comment.
Because he's just too big.
Now, you might not know this, but Drowsy and Hypno are known for hypnotizing people. You know who else hypnotizes people? Cults! That's why I'm gonna put the 2 cult leaders, Leona and Diana, as our resident Drowsy and Hypno, because I think that makes a lot of sense. It was a little difficult to decide who evolves into who, but then it dawned on me. It dawned on me. Please laugh. Execute and Executor are our last grass Pokemon, and you know what region has some grass? That's right, Noxious. I'm sure there's at least one blade of grass in that hellish place, which is why we're gonna put our little Noxian, Khalid, as Execute, and our biggest Noxian as Executor.
We have another big man.
Now, skipping ahead a little bit because I realize I've missed this whole time, is Misfortune and Gangplank. That's a very obvious pair, and they should definitely be water Pokemon, which is why I'm gonna put them under Staryu and Starmie. Hey, but what about Porygon? That's a funky little dude. He changes himself based on what he is fighting, which is why I'm gonna put Silas, the champion who changes himself based on who he is fighting. Plus, he gets to be right next to his lovely Demacian friends. Isn't that lovely? Next, we have Horsey and Seadra. Those are water Pokemon, and you know what we've been putting under water Pokemon? That's right, Freljords. It's time for the crazy homeless people champions, Olaf and Udyr. Now we got Seal and Seeking, who are water Pokemon. And who have we been putting under water Pokemon? That's right, X-Tall champions. Here's 2 of them. That's 2 of them right there. I definitely knew there was a region of X-Tall this whole time. One of them is some kind of royalty, and the other lives in the woods. So Nidalee is going to evolve into Kiana. And now for another completely different region, we have our Darkin champions. I'm going to put them under Cubone and Marowak, as not only do they use weapons, their weapons are partly a part of themselves. Next is Rhyhorn and Rhydon, who I'm going to put as Jace and Victor, because I don't think they fit actually very well, but I would be lynched if I didn't include them somewhere. I'm going to have Victor as Rhydon because he's all about that glorious evolution. For Pinsir, I'm going to put the new guy because... So there he goes. Alright, only a few more Pokemon to go. And next we have the honor of matching Lord Helix himself. Truly, he is a beautiful religious figure. So for these 2, I'm gonna put Renekton, the literal Shurima god who's been shafted this whole time, and Janna, who people pray to for good weather. And finally, for the very last 2, fuck it. Yeah, these 2 seem pretty good. Pantheon has a shield, and Kabuto looks like a shield, so I'm gonna say that's pretty solid. And Yone gets to be Kabutops as... Again, a lot of people have swords here, but he's the only one running around with 2. And there we go, I can't believe we actually did it, and to think only several dozen were horribly forced. Now, I believe I did the absolute best job anybody possibly could, but I imagine there's been a few of you screaming at the screen about how terribly I'm doing. So I'm gonna include a link down below for the template on how you could do your very own. Post it and tell me how fucking wrong I am. And please do. I'd love to tell you how stupid you are in return. But either way, thank you for watching all the way through. I'm gonna have some more Pokemon content coming out in the future. I swear, it won't just be me laughing at Scarlet and how absolutely glitchy it is.